This film includes several procedures or parts of procedures of the shock absorber servicing. Check charge pressure of the main landing gear shock absorber. Visual inspection of the main landing gear two-stage shock absorber for leakage of hydraulic fluid. Nitrogen filling of the main landing gear two-stage shock absorber, aircraft on the ground. The values of some parameters, such as temperature, pressure, etc., have to be recorded to perform this procedure. Depending on the value obtained, some parts must or must not be done, referring to the aircraft maintenance manual. Of course, when you will effectively do it, you will have to adapt your actions to the values you will obtain. In no case can the values used in this film be used as a reference. Warning: put the safety devices and the warning notices in position before you start a task on or near the flight controls, the flight control surfaces, the landing gear and the related doors, any components that move. Make sure that the ground safety locks are in position on the landing gear. Note that it is recommended that you wait a minimum of 10 minutes after taxiing or towing before you carry out this procedure. This will allow you to get a stable temperature and a more accurate value of the shock absorber extension and pressures. During this procedure, actions will be made on the top charging valve, also called valve A, and on the bottom charging valve, also called valve B. A placard located underneath the top charging valve gives you a summary of the information necessary to perform this procedure. It consists of a gear schematic which shows you where you have to measure the height h. A summarized actions list which presents the main points necessary to perform the dedicated procedures. Diagram 1, which allows you to find a target value, h, depending on the measured temperature and the pressure on the top charging valve. Diagram 2, which gives the same information but for a different step of the procedure. Diagram 3 enables you to find the position of a point determined by the temperature and the pressure values in relation to a graph line. In the cockpit, make sure that the landing gear control lever is in the down position and put a warning notice in position to tell people not to operate the landing gear. On the outside, make sure that the wheel chocks are in position on the main landing gear, but do not put a chock on the nose wheel. Put a warning notice in position to tell persons not to operate the landing gear doors. Put the access platform in position below the applicable shock absorber. Before filling with nitrogen, examine the gland housing of the shock absorber for leakage of hydraulic fluid. In case of leakage, refer to your AMM to troubleshoot. Measure and record dimension h. Measure and record the temperature of the MLG adjacent to the top charging valve. Put the standard charging equipment into position. On the top charging valve, remove the blanking cap. On the charging equipment, make sure that the control valves are closed and connect the filling hose. Do the same on the bottom charging valve. Caution! Make sure that you use a gauge with the specified pressure range. On the top charging valve, slowly open it read and record the pressure shown on the pressure gauge, and then close it. Do the same on the bottom charging valve. Using diagram 1, find the dimension HA for the pressure at the top charging valve and the measured temperature. As the condition H equals HA plus or minus 15 millimeters is not fulfilled, we have to do the nitrogen filling of the MLG two-stage shock absorber. The pressure at the bottom charging valve must be between 13.8 and 20.7 bar above the pressure at the top charging valve. This is to ensure that the floating piston is at the top of the bottom chamber, key point in case of restart. To perform this condition, we are going to pressurize the bottom chamber. Warning! Do not put compressed gas in contact with your skin. The gas can go through the skin and cause bubbles in the blood. This could cause death. Make sure that the area around the aircraft is clear of persons and equipment. When you pressurize or depressurize the shock absorber, with the aircraft weight on the ground, the aircraft will move. Caution! Always add nitrogen slowly when you pressurize the shock absorber. If you add nitrogen too quickly, the temperature will increase and have an effect on the shock absorber pressure. On the bottom charging valve, the nitrogen supply being open, open the bottom charging valve. Open the control supply valve slowly to add nitrogen to the bottom chamber. Close the bottom charging valve. Wait 10 minutes and make sure that the pressure condition is fulfilled. The bottom chamber pressure is still the same. Check the pressure of the top chamber too. Slowly open the top charging valve. read and record the pressure shown on the pressure gauge, and then close it. As the pressure condition is not fulfilled, we have to increase the pressure in the bottom chamber by adding nitrogen. On the bottom charging valve, the bottom charging valve being open, open the control supply valve slowly to add nitrogen to the bottom chamber. And close the bottom charging valve. Wait 10 minutes and make sure that the pressure condition between the two chambers is fulfilled. The pressure condition is fulfilled. The nitrogen pressure being released, read and write down the temperature again, as well as the dimension H. Make sure that the difference in pressure at the top charging valve and the bottom charging valve is more than 10.7 bar, this condition being enough at this point. Using diagram 2, find the dimension HA for the pressure and the temperature at the top charging valve. Dimension H must be the same as HA plus or minus 1 millimeter. Depending on whether H is higher or lower than the value of HA found on diagram 2, we have respectively to remove or add nitrogen from the top chamber. As H is lower than the value of H found on diagram 2, we have to add nitrogen to the top chamber. To do that, open the top charging valve. The nitrogen supply being open, slowly open the control valve to add nitrogen. As soon as the shock absorber moves, close the control valve. After 5 minutes, measure the temperature and the pressure at the top charging valve. Using diagram 2, find the dimension HA required for these conditions. Slowly open the control valve to add nitrogen to obtain the same dimension H as we found before, H equals HA plus or minus 1 millimeter. After 5 minutes, open the top and the bottom charging valves. Read and write down pressures, the temperature, the dimension H. Using the pressure and the temperature, find the correct dimension H in diagram 2 and make sure that this value is equal to the previous measured value, plus or minus 1 millimeter. Make sure that the difference in pressure at the top charging valve and the bottom charging valve is still more than 10.7 bar. Close the top and the bottom charging valves. Now, depending on if the pressure and the temperature of the top charging valve is either on or below, or above the graph line on diagram 3, there are two possibilities. In our case, as PA is above the graph line, we have to carry out the following steps. Using diagram 1, find the dimension HA for the pressure at the top charging valve and the measured temperature. Open the bottom charging valve. Slowly open the control valve to remove nitrogen, and immediately the dimension H starts to change. close the control valve. After 5 minutes, open the top charging valve and read and record the pressure and the temperature. Using diagram 1, find the dimension h that you need for the above conditions. Slowly open the control valve to remove nitrogen from the bottom charging valve until the dimension h is the same as the dimension h found in diagram 1, plus or minus 1 millimeter. Close the bottom charging valve. After 5 minutes, check the pressures. Open the top charging valve, read and write down the pressure, and then close it. Open the bottom charging valve, read and write down the pressure, and close it. Make sure that the pressure at the top and bottom charging valves are the same, plus or minus 1.5 bar. If not, you have to do the procedure again, starting from the step where the floating piston must be moved to the top of the bottom chamber. Release the nitrogen pressure. On the bottom charging valve, torque the valve to the preset value. Remove the charging equipment. Use special materials to do a leak check of the valve. Install the blanking cap. Remove the thermometer. On the top charging valve, do the same as on the bottom charging valve. Remove the access platform. Examine the gland seal of the shock absorber for signs of oil leaks. Remove the ground support and maintenance equipment, the special and standard tools, and all other items. Remove the warning equipment and notices. Make sure that the work area is clean and clear of tools and other items.